They found his teeth before they found his name. Buried in wet cement beneath what would become the Empire State Building's north foundation, a worker screamed once, then never again. The police report said, construction accident. But the crew, they knew better. This wasn't the first. And it wouldn't be the last. Everyone on site heard the whisper. The building belonged to the Moretti family now. That morning, Tony Moretti lit a cigar while the coroner zipped the bag. He said, "Tell the boys to pour. We're behind schedule." The ironworkers didn't speak. One crossed himself. Cement trucks roared to life like obedient hounds, and the man's name, whatever it was, drowned beneath a river of gray. Evelyn Moretti watched it all from the back seat of a black Cadillac, her gloves clenched, her eyes hollow. She was 17, and that was the first time she saw death disappear without a sound. Evelyn didn't speak on the drive home. The Cadillac hummed through Manhattan's dawn silence, past newsboys shouting headlines I'd never print. Her father, Don Salvatore Moretti, sat beside her, calm, unreadable. He tapped his ring against the window, watching buildings blur by like ghosts. "That man disrespected our name," he finally said. Evelyn whispered. He was scared. The dawn turned, slow and heavy. Then he should have been silent. Evelyn looked away. Outside, the city stretched into sunlit ambition, but Evelyn only saw the pit. She had never seen death before. And yet, in her bones, she felt something far colder. The realization that this was only the beginning. Back at the site, the workers returned to steel and silence. No one mentioned the body. Not even Louis, who'd seen it first. He just tightened bolts and tried not to look at the pit. A new foreman arrived that afternoon. White shoes. Slick hair. No calluses. "Call me Vic," he said, smiling too wide. The crew exchanged glances. Vic didn't know the job, but he knew how to talk fast, and he knew who signed his checks. He pointed to the sky. "We're going vertical, boys. Fastest build in history." Jimmy Russo, a welder, muttered, "Fastest body count, maybe." No one laughed. By dusk, steel rose above the blood, but every beam held weight no crane could measure. That night, Evelyn sat at her vanity, untouched dinner cooling on a silver tray. She stared at her reflection, but saw the man in the cement. Her mother knocked once, then entered. "Your father says you're upset." Evelyn said nothing. Her mother brushed her hair slowly. "This city eats the weak, Evie. We build things. Big things. Ugly things. But they last." Evelyn's voice cracked. "And what about the men inside them?" Her mother paused, then kissed her forehead. "Some people get remembered, others get buried." The door shut softly behind her. Evelyn stared at herself again. Only this time she saw a ghost with her own eyes. Midnight. Jimmy Russo drank whiskey alone atop the scaffolding, steel groaning beneath him. The city flickered far below. Alive, unaware. He held a photo of his baby boy, folded and worn. "One more week," he whispered. "Then I'm out." Footsteps. He turned. Vic. Smiling, cigarette in hand. "You're a smart guy, Jimmy. Don't make dumb promises." Jimmy said nothing. Vic flicked his cigarette off the edge and walked away. Jimmy stared after him, stomach sinking. In that moment, he realized the truth. No one left this site clean. Not with secrets poured into the concrete. Jimmy Russo's hands were cracked, burned and lined with steel dust. But he'd earned his place. Years of grit and silence paid off when Vic handed him an envelope one morning, thick with cash, no questions asked. "You're in now," Vic said, voice like a blade. Jimmy opened it. Cash, a name, and an address. "What's this?" Vic shrugged. "Just a little persuasion. You want to stay on the site, right?" Jimmy's stomach dropped. The address was near his sister's place. The name? Someone he went to school with. That night, he stood outside a tenement door, fists clenched. He didn't knock. But he understood something brutal. This job wasn't about building steel. It was about how deep you could bury your conscience. Evelyn sat in her father's study, a fortress of dark wood and older secrets. The Don poured 2 glasses of grappa and placed one in front of her. "Time you understood the business," he said. Evelyn met his eyes, cold, sure, unflinching. "You mean the murders?" The Don chuckled once. "I mean the city. Steel is only strong when someone fears falling. We make them fear." He pushed a folder toward her, construction permits, labor union payoffs, and a photo of a man with a bullet between the eyes. "We don't build buildings," he whispered. "We build obedience." Evelyn stared at the glass. Her hands didn't shake, but something inside her did. Inside a freight elevator shaft, Louis adjusted the weight cables with trembling hands. 2 other workers stood nearby, watching, not helping. Vic emerged above them, chewing on a toothpick. "That union vote?" he asked. "It's not happening." Louis nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "But we—" Vic stepped forward. "But nothing." He handed Louis an envelope. "Vote the way we tell you. Or take the express ride down, understand?" Louis looked into the empty shaft behind him. "Yeah," he whispered. "I understand." That day the elevator ran smooth. But from then on, every ride down felt like a loaded gun. 1 block away, a rival crew had been watching. Irish boys from the west side, mean, hungry, desperate. Their boss, McKiernan, leaned on a lamppost outside a diner, whispering plans. "They think the tower's theirs? We'll see." His crew nodded. Later that night a delivery truck meant for Moretti's men was hijacked. Cement bags burned in an alley. But retaliation came swift. 2 days later McKiernan's number 2 was found in a drainage pipe, his head split like a dropped melon. The message was clear. The empire wasn't big enough for 2 kings. And the Irish had just lost their first night. At sunrise, the crew returned to work. No one spoke of the Irishman's death. But their eyes said everything. Jimmy climbed a new beam, welding torch in hand, flames dancing inches from death. From above, Evelyn watched from a scaffold catwalk. She'd come without her father. No guards. Just a notebook in hand. "Why are you here?" Jimmy called down. "To see if ghosts bleed," she replied. Jimmy laughed once. Short. Bitter. "They don't." Then he turned back to the beam. Evelyn didn't write anything. But the wind carried her silence like a verdict. She wasn't just her father's daughter anymore. She was learning how to haunt the living. They watered down the concrete again. Everyone knew it. But no one spoke. Not with Vic walking the beams like a preacher at mass. "Keep it moving," he barked, while his clipboard covered numbers that didn't add up. Cheaper mix. Faster pours. Bigger profits. Jimmy watched a load slosh into place and felt his stomach twist. "This stuff won't last a year," he muttered. Louis nodded grimly. "Doesn't have to, just long enough to cash out." Workers stopped caring about blueprints. They cared about staying alive. One man broke his ankle stepping into a soft patch. Another lost fingers in a slide. Every shortcut soaked the foundation in fear. Evelyn, now shadowing city inspections, wrote nothing down, but her eyes missed nothing. And the building kept rising, fragile as a lie made of stone. 2 days later, police swarmed the site. Someone tipped them off. Hidden among the iron deliveries, crates of dynamite. Not enough to demolish a building, but enough to send a message. A grizzled detective knelt by the open crate and muttered, "Someone's playing loud." Don Moretti arrived minutes later, hands in coat pockets, smile never reaching his eyes. "I hear someone's worried about booms," he said. The detective stood. "You hiding fireworks in your blueprints?" Moretti lit a match with his thumbnail and let the flame hover near the open crate. "Only if you're planning a parade." No arrest followed. Just a quiet retreat. The message landed clear. Some men build with threats, and some with silence. The dawn built with both. Evelyn pushed open the church doors and found him, Benny Cusso, her father's consigliere, seated in the last pew like sin in a suit. "You told him to bury that man," she hissed. Benny didn't look up. "I told him to finish the foundation. The man buried himself." Evelyn stepped closer, rage trembling in her voice. "You think that makes it holy?" Benny finally turned, face lined like cracked marble. "Your father built this city's bones, girl. Not with prayers, with men like me." Evelyn's hand tightened around her rosary. "Then maybe this city needs new bones." Benny's smirk faded. "Careful what you dig up, girl. The past has teeth." She left without blessing or peace. Outside, the wind howled like judgment waiting to strike. Jimmy walked into the wrong conversation at the wrong time. In the steel hangar behind scaffolding, he heard Vic talking fast, too fast, to a man with city papers. "Dawn says the next 3 floors skip inspection," Vic hissed. "You want to keep your pension? Sign off." Jimmy froze. The inspector noticed him. "Who's that?" Vic turned, eyes like gun barrels. "He is nobody." But Jimmy knew that tone, that threat. He slipped out before the lies wrapped around his throat. That night, he stared at his reflection and saw a man already dying. He had 2 choices, speak and die fast, or stay silent and rot slow. The crane gave out at 2:14 p.m. The cable snapped like a scream. A 6-ton beam plunged 50 feet and crushed a supply station. 3 men died instantly, one just a boy from Queens. His helmet rolled to the edge of the platform and stopped at Jimmy's boot. Evelyn, arriving moments later, saw the blood on the concrete. She turned to Vic. This wasn't an accident. Vic lit a cigarette with hands that didn't shake. "You're right, it was overdue." Later that night, Evelyn wrote her brother's name beside the boy's in her notebook. He had died on a site just like this, buried in silence. Now she had a list. And Vic had a clock. Evelyn turned the last page of her father's ledgers in the dead of night. Red ink. Fake names. Payouts to ghosts. Tucked in the back, a receipt stained with blood and cement, labeled January 12, Site 4, Resolve. She stared at the entry until her hands trembled. That was the day her brother died in the war. But he never enlisted. Evelyn had been 12 when she last saw him. Now, her breath caught like a secret too big to swallow. Her brother hadn't vanished in Europe. He'd been buried in concrete right here, beneath steel and silence. Her fingers grazed the name circled in the margins, Enzo Moretti. She whispered it like a prayer. Or a curse. Either way, the silence shattered. Jimmy stood in the loading bay, fingering a rusted bolt in his pocket like a rosary. Vic approached, lips twisted in his usual grin. "You've been quiet." Jimmy shrugged, trying not to fall. Vic leaned in. "Everyone falls. It's about who you land on." He handed Jimmy another envelope. "Last job." Jimmy looked inside. Photo, keycard, blueprints. "This ain't labor work," he said. Vic nodded. "Nope. This is loyalty." Jimmy stared past him, at the skeleton of the tower reaching into storm clouds. "And if I say no?" Vic's smile faded. "Then the next body we bury might still be breathing." The envelope felt heavier now, like cement in his hands. City Councilman Reiner never saw it coming. That morning, he took the same elevator in the municipal building he always did. Floor 20. Doors opened. No floor. Just air. He plunged like a stone in silence. Papers fluttered after him. The city called it mechanical failure. But Evelyn knew better. She'd seen the warnings, the permit Reiner refused to sign. He was the last holdout blocking the Morettis from acquiring another 10 floors. The next day the paperwork passed. No objections. No memorial. Evelyn stood in the hallway where he vanished, staring at the shaft doors now welded shut. She didn't cry. She took notes. By week's end, the Moretti crew started cleaning house. Tommy, 2 hats vanished from the Union Hall. Big Al was found face down in the East River. Even Louis stopped showing up. When Jimmy asked around, no one looked him in the eye. He found a wrench left on his locker. Clean, polished, and wrapped in cloth. A warning. Or a goodbye. That night, Evelyn met him by the river, coat wrapped tight, her voice shaking. "They're killing anyone who talks." Jimmy lit a match with unsteady fingers. Then we stopped talking. Their eyes locked, equal parts fear and fire. The city roared behind them, but neither listened. The war wasn't coming. It was already here. Evelyn sat cross-legged on the attic floor, old newspapers and photos spread like a battlefield. One clipping stopped her breath. Moretti family son dies in wee. But the date was wrong. The photo beside it showed Enzo in a hard hat, laughing with Union men. Stamped, January 11th, 1931. One day before he died. She flipped it over, scrawled in pencil. He knew too much. Evelyn didn't scream. She didn't cry. She lit a candle and pressed the clipping into her notebook. Below it, she wrote a name. Then another. Then another. Each one a man buried beneath silence. Her hand shook, but her resolve didn't. For the first time, the girl born into shadows started drawing her own blueprints. It was never on the blueprints. No measurements. No floor number. But the workers whispered about it, the floor that didn't exist. A bricked-off level somewhere between 86 and 87, where sounds echoed wrong and lights flickered without cause. Jimmy found it by accident. A misplaced keycard. A broken freight lift. He stepped off into silence. Crates sealed shut. Furniture wrapped in plastic. And in the far corner, a wall freshly laid with different brick. He pressed his hand against it. Hollow. Someone had been buried here. Maybe Enzo. Maybe more. Jimmy's flashlight died, and he stood there in total dark, hearing his own breath tighten. Then, just barely, a whisper. "You don't leave." Jimmy ran. But the floor stayed with him, like a secret stitched into the bones of the tower. The next morning, Jimmy met Evelyn outside the site fence, eyes bloodshot, fingers trembling. "There's a floor that's not a floor," he muttered. Evelyn didn't flinch. She handed him a photo, Enzo, same brick wall behind him. "I think that's where he died." Jimmy swallowed hard. "I don't think he's alone." Evelyn scanned the site behind them. Workers moved like shadows. Vic barked orders from a scaffold. "It's time," she said. "We opened the wall." Jimmy looked at her. This girl made of fire and ghosts. "You sure?" Evelyn's voice cracked. "No, but he deserves to be found." The skyline rose behind them, indifferent and shining. But beneath it, truth waited, patient, buried, hungry. They broke in just after midnight. Jimmy pried open the side freight entrance, while Evelyn kept watch. No one spoke. The tower groaned around them like it knew. On the ghost floor, he hammered through the wall. Dust choked the air. Behind the brick, bones. Wrapped in torn cloth. A metal tag around the neck. Enzo Moretti. Evelyn knelt, tears silent. "He was just trying to leave," she whispered. Jimmy stared at the tag, jaw clenched. "Now he can." They wrapped the bones in Evelyn's coat. Footsteps echoed above, too close. "Go," Jimmy said. "I'll finish." Evelyn hesitated, then vanished down the freight stair. Jimmy lifted the last brick. Behind it, more bones. 5 sets. And one still fresh. He dropped his crowbar. This wasn't a burial. It was storage. At dawn, Don Moretti arrived on site. First time in years. No guards. Just him, in a dark overcoat, walking the scaffold like a priest at mass. Workers paused. Vic looked nervous. Evelyn stepped out to meet him, Enzo's dog tag in her palm. She held it up. "You killed your own son." The Don didn't blink. He turned his back on the family. Evelyn's voice trembled. He wanted out. You buried him in your empire. The Don took the tag, fingers closing tight. That's where family belongs. Jimmy appeared behind him, pipe in hand. Not anymore. The Don turned slowly, eyes tired. You think this ends with me? Jimmy raised the pipe. No, but it starts here. And everything stopped. Jimmy didn't swing. He lowered the pipe. The Don stepped back, nodding once, as if handing over the deed to his sins. Hours later, he disappeared. No one saw him leave. No one ever saw him again. Evelyn made calls. Quiet ones. Press. City Hall. The ledger pages moved like poison through the veins of New York. Vic. He vanished too. Rumors said Cuba. Or the bottom of the East River. Jimmy kept working, but not on the tower. He built a grave. 1 floor below public view. Wad. A plaque. Delving. No names. Just dates. A silence reclaimed. Evelyn visited often. Not to pray, but to remember. Because some legacies are built in glass and gold. And some are buried in the floor that doesn't exist. Vic got the call at midnight. A voice he knew too well. The Don's gone, clean it up. He didn't ask who. Didn't have to. By sunrise, Jimmy was marked. Vic walked the unfinished 89th floor with a colt in his coat and rage in his bones. But Evelyn was waiting. Not hiding, standing in plain view with Jimmy beside her. You don't have to do this, Jimmy said. Vic smiled. You think you get to walk away? You think this tower ends without blood? Evelyn stepped between them. Then let it start with mine. For a second, the world stilled. Vic hesitated. Then from behind, 3 Union men emerged, armed, silent. Jimmy said, "We're done with blood." Vic's smirk vanished. He turned slowly, then dropped the gun. You just made yourselves kings of nothing. And walked into the fog. The press exploded. A whistleblower package arrived on every editor's desk. Names, payments, bodies, blueprints. Evelyn's fingerprints were everywhere, but no name signed. The Moretti family was severed from its own myth. Banks pulled out. City contracts stalled. And still the tower climbed higher, as if mocking the dead beneath. Jimmy returned to the job one last time. Welded the final bolt. No speeches. Just silence. He left his gloves on the girder, like an offering to the ghosts. Then he walked away from the skyline he helped build, never looking back. Evelyn watched from below. She didn't wave. She didn't cry. She just closed her notebook. The last chapter was written. They offered Jimmy a medal, a ceremony, a title. He declined them all. I didn't build this for glory, he said. I built it to survive. But one man, an old inspector, asked for a private word. I remember your brother, he said. Jimmy froze. I don't have a brother. The inspector smiled sadly. Neither did I, but I buried one. He handed Jimmy a folded page. An anonymous testimony, naming names. Jimmy scanned it. At the bottom, a signature. Enzo Moretti. Before he died, he'd tried to warn them. Jimmy stood in silence, paper trembling in his hand. He didn't die for nothing, the inspector whispered. Make sure of it. Jimmy nodded. The page and the truth stayed with him. City Hall burned that winter. No alarms. No suspects. Just fire, fast and total. The archive, gone. All evidence of corruption vanished in one night. Official story? Faulty wiring. Real story. Silence bought with flame. Evelyn watched from across the street, scarf tight against the wind, tears stinging her eyes. Jimmy joined her, face lit by orange glow. They're erasing it, she said. Jimmy stared at the flames. Then we remember it louder. She handed him a new notebook. On the cover, Enzo's initials. Inside, pages already filled with names, stories, floor numbers. The truth couldn't be killed, only rewritten. And this time, they were holding the pen. They sealed the final girder that spring. City banners flew. Flashbulbs popped. But up high, where no press climbed, Jimmy etched 3 names into the steel. Enzo Moretti. Tommy, 2 hats. Louis Santoro. Then he added one more. Evelyn didn't ask him to. He just knew. Below, a new city rose, unaware of its foundation's cost. But in the quietest corners, in back rooms, hidden ledgers, whispered warnings, the tower's true story remained. Not carved in marble, but in muscle, memory, and the kind of silence that screams forever. Jimmy touched the names once, then stepped back. Done, he said. Not to anyone. Just to the dead. Evelyn stood on the observation deck, wind tugging at her coat, hair dancing like memory. Tourists milled around, pointing at bridges and burrows. But she didn't look out, she looked down. Past the marble, past the beams, past the bones. Somewhere below her feet, her brother slept in cement. Her voice was barely a breath. We made it, Enzo. Not to the top, but through the silence. She clutched the notebook tight, leather worn, pages weathered by truth. A boy passed her, asking his father, "How high is it?" Evelyn didn't answer. The father said, "Tall enough to touch the clouds." Evelyn smiled, but not tall enough to hide everything. She turned away. The city below had no idea it stood on graves. But Evelyn never forgot. Jimmy disappeared without a sound. One day he was there, welding a railing for a city park. The next, gone. No goodbyes. No trail. Just a pair of gloves left behind. Evelyn found them, tucked into the roots of a tree they used to sit beneath. She didn't cry. She just sat down and waited. After an hour, she whispered, "Thank you." For what? For surviving. For not becoming what tried to kill him. For walking away instead of burning it all. Some say he went west. Others say he died quietly. Evelyn believed something else. That men like Jimmy don't disappear. They just become part of the city, part of the silence that holds it up. The Moretti family fractured like a dried branch. Without the dawn, loyalties dissolved. Cousins turned on cousins. Old debts came due. And Evelyn? She rewrote the books. Slowly. Quietly. With ink, not blood. She sold properties. Shut down front businesses. Handed keys to union men her father once threatened. Some called it betrayal. Some called it mercy. She called it balance. Her father built empires on silence. She dismantled them one whisper at a time. In the end, she sat at his old desk, same chair, same window. But the view looked different now. No ghosts, just a city that breathed. And Evelyn, no longer the Don's daughter, just Evelyn. The 103rd floor remained sealed. No tours, no photos. Just a locked steel door and a sign that reads "Authorized access only." But the workers know. So do the inspectors. It's the floor that hums when no one's speaking. That drops temperature when no one's watching. The floor where lights flicker and drills fail. Evelyn visits once a year. Leaves a white rose at the entrance. Says nothing. Every time the same elevator creaks when she turns to leave. The ghosts don't want revenge. Just remembrance. And she gives it to them, year after year. Quietly. Because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just never forgetting. Tourists take photos every day. Of the crown. The view, roll. The glass. They buy postcards and magnets, and never ask who died for the shine. But sometimes, a child turns, staring down the hallway that leads nowhere. Or a worker pauses, mid-task, unsure why he's sweating in winter. The Empire State Building doesn't speak, but it remembers. In groans. In cold spots. In names no one writes down. Evelyn once said, There's no retirement plan for ghosts. She was right. Some are buried in silence. Some walk the beams. And some live in the stories no one dares tell. Until now.